Thank you very much, John. I'm delighted to recognize in the hall Professor Sir Stanley Wells, which gives me the opportunity to thank him in person for writing a blurb which is on the back jacket. Allow me to share a few thoughts about a biography, the angle from which I approach poetic Shakespeare, before delving into the lives and works of the two most prodigious American collectors of Shakespeare, Henry and Emily Folger. For 15 years, I have belonged to a biography group where around 30 aficionados gather every month. The discussion leader begins by stating the qualifications for membership. 1, you like to read biography. 2, you are writing a biography. Or 3, you are in peril of becoming the subject. A third of the group are writing memoirs. We go around the room introducing ourselves. There are new members at every meeting. Then we settle down for an hour's discussion on a pre-established theme, such as how to make nonfiction read like fiction, how to find a literary agent, how to use social media to market one's book, or how to write a great first sentence. I'd be very interested in a show of hands from people in this room who have written biography or memoir, who are planning to write biography or memoir. Don't be bashful in raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, and counting. This summer, biographer James Atlas looked back on the craft with these reflections. Biographers then were obsessive researchers. They collected documents and letters, ransacked library archives, traveled the world interviewing people. They combed through old periodicals and newspapers. They were, in a word, diggers. And they were avid about the past, for knowledge about vanished worlds. And they had discipline, what the Germans call Sitzfleisch, literally sitting down flesh. The capacity to sit at your desk for long hours over a period of years that might stretch beyond a decade. So you needed patience too. You needed to take the long view and to forego any gratification, to see the writing of a biography as a lifetime occupation. But spending so much time in the company of someone else requires the most important quality a biographer must possess: empathy. You are going to spend more time in the company of this person, dead or alive, than you will with your children or your spouse. Permit me to add that unless you are self-publishing, you need to convince the publisher to take on your writing project for it to become a printed book. My literary agent sent my proposal in 3 sample chapters to over a dozen commercial and academic publishers. One reaction was, there's not enough scandal in the Folger's lives to interest us. The director of the Folger Shakespeare Library in her office asked, "Steve, can't you find a love baby?" My reply was, I could not. A biographer seeks to capture a life, lives of the couple who founded the Folger Shakespeare Library in 1932. Henry and Emily Folger were conscientious collectors with a shared passion of devotion to the bard. Henry and Emily made 11 trips to the UK from 1903 to 1922. A century later, I'm bringing them on their 12th. If you have been to my home state of Massachusetts, you may have visited the island of Nantucket on Cape Cod. The whaling museum there is called the Peter Folger Museum. Peter Folger was born in 1617 in the village of Diss, near the city of Norwich in East Anglia. He and his future wife, an indentured servant named Mary Morrow, emigrated to the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1635 under Charles I. Therefore, 2017 is the 400th anniversary of the birth of Peter Folger. Let's all say happy birthday. Folgers in the New World trace their ancestry back to Peter. Here is how the man signed his name. Note the double F in Folger. The O-U-L in time became O-L. Folgers were Reformed Flemish Protestants. Peter and Mary Folger had 9 children, the last of whom was named Abia. Abia married a soap maker from Boston named Josiah Franklin. They had a son. We have equipped Benjamin to listen to fake news. Henry Folger enjoyed telling his friends that Benjamin Franklin's mother was a Folger. Henry wrote, "Had I not collected Shakespeareana, I would have collected Frankliniana." Ben received an honorary degree from St. Andrews, Edinburgh in 1759 and from Oxford in 1762. Henry Folger Sr. was adored in the family for his horseshoe mustache and musical abilities. He taught his son to play the organ. He was a businessman whose fortunes went up and down. After the panic of 1873, he found himself with only 75 cents in his pocket. Clad in white shirt with a lace collar, Henry Jr. is grasping a book, spine up. He is already a budding bibliophile. He is holding the first of 92,000 books he will acquire in his lifetime. Emily Jordan, his bride-to-be, in checkered calico, is somewhat taken aback. People collect 92,000. The two of us will assemble the largest collection of Shakespeare on the planet. How are we going to do that, Henry dear? The couple, the childless couple, working alone, developed a prodigious book collecting machine. Henry called his books his boys. Henry and Emily were born in the 1850s, at a time in America when many household libraries consisted of only 2 books. What books? The Bible and Shakespeare. They grew up learning passages from each and pondering their significance. Emily Jordan from being taken aback when she was young, is now a senior at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York. She has just been elected president of her class of 16 students, president for life. She loves astronomy, she loves theater, and she loves literature. Henry Folger, in the middle, pictured with his fraternity mates, is a senior at Amherst College, Massachusetts. He graduated from Amherst 84 years before I did. His roommate, Charles Pratt, right there. Charles Pratt, his father was the largest oil refiner in the world. 1 week after graduation, Henry and Charlie, inseparable, went to work for Charles Pratt Sr. in the young petroleum industry. The company had just been bought out in a secret deal by this man. Any guesses who that man might be? Yes, thank you. John D. Rockefeller Sr. Henry started as a statistical clerk and worked his way up the ladder, spending 49 years at Standard Oil, and his last positions were the CEO of Standard Oil New York, that later became Mobil Oil Corporation. With very few college graduates on his staff, John D. recognized that Folger, who earned a law degree, had math smarts. He calculated cost-yield ratios for every refinery, making him the boss's invaluable right-hand man. In 1885, the two Amherst men read 2 Vassar Ways and celebrated their close friendship with a studio photograph. Emily is in dark on the floor. Henry started to sprout a mustache. Henry signed a check to John D. Rockefeller in 1918 for $53,000. In today's money, that is $800,000. He was repaying a loan to buy Shakespeare. I will spare you the other 10,000 checks that Henry left behind, but I have scrutinized every one. Think of it this way: the checkbook is an autobiography. It shows where your values lie. When Henry came home from his day job, he put together auction bid lists. He corresponded with 600 booksellers, 150 in London alone. He insisted on taking 10% discount because he paid it in cash. He inspected each item he won before paying. He hated publicity. He was afraid that the cost of his purchases would skyrocket. Avoiding his own name in communications, he signed his tables golf. Dr. Rosenbach was the Philadelphia bookseller who procured at British auctions many Shakespeare treasures for Folger. Armed with a PhD in English and aggressive salesmanship, he was successful in persuading Henry Folger on the East Coast and Henry Huntington on the West Coast to buy his goods. In an article, Why America Buys England's Books, Rosenbach affirmed that there was nothing new about American interest in buying rare British books. He traced the practice back to 1840. This 1922 artwork from Punch portrays Uncle Sam embodying American collectors Folger and Huntington, standing over Shakespeare's bones and carrying away from the UK, Fitzroy's folio and Gainsborough's blue book. Emily was the one who defined the nature of the Folger collection. She read through 250 linear feet of auction catalogs, that's 4/5 of a football. When the books were acquired, she described each item in her card catalog. Another 75-year fee. Unsurprisingly, she developed writer's cramp. In 1896, 250 American women obtained master's degrees. Emily was one of them. Here's the title page of her master's thesis, The True Text of Shakespeare. Emily believed the true text, or most authentic, was the first. Who has an idea of the identity of this man? His last name begins with Q. Bernard Quaritch Sr. was one viewer who did not warrant to Folger's business terms. In 1897, he wrote the American Collector. I regret that you insist upon a discount for my catalog prices and must decline trading on such terms that other collectors allow 10% discount is no precedent for me. I'm sorry I must lose you as a customer, but they adjusted to each other. I visited Quaritch Bookshop in London in 2008. After listening to my spiel with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, consultant in Continental Books, Nicholas Poole Wilson disappeared from his cavernous front office with floor-to-ceiling belt, promising I'll be back. He returned with a marked-up book auction catalog from 1903, bound in the back a bid list from Henry Folger's small clerk's hand, with the most exciting moments for me of the 35 archives I visited during my research. Just as the Folgers save their checks, so that they keep their hundreds of mailing labels. This from Mags in 1903, a year when Henry purchased no fewer than 8 first folios. The Folgers lived in this rented Brooklyn brownstone, where unpacking of the Shakespeare collection took place in the basement. Once Emily cataloged the items, they were sent off in her name in storage warehouses and to vaults sprinkled all over Brooklyn and Manhattan. Shakespeare scholars branded Folger a hoarder because he never let them view his treasures. During the Folger's lifetime, this stack of Shakespeare plays in quarto were not displayed in such a colorful fashion as in this recent photo. Robert Richard plays are from the 17th century. The leather bindings were added in the 19th century. Emerson received from Henry Folger 43 volumes of Pretorius photographic facsimiles of the Shakespeare quartos. The Folgers themselves acquired 178 original Shakespeare quartos. When the first compilation of 36 Shakespeare plays was printed in 1623, it came out in folio. This copy is open to the title page for Emily. The first folio was the cornerstone of their Shakespeare collection. Henry called the first folio the greatest contribution ever made to the world's secular literature. The second folio came out in 1632, the third folio in 1664, and the fourth folio in 1685. In total, the Folgers collected 200 Shakespeare folios. The Folgers acquired 82 copies of the first folio, or approximately 1/3 of the surviving copies. They're all different in some respects. Size, condition, binding, provenance, spelling variants, pagination, marginalia, number of genuine leaves, of facsimile leaves, of missing pages. Folger's aim was not only to collect, but to build a research library where scholars could study and analyze the fruits of his collecting mania. The first folio was open to the to be or not to be soliloquy. In all of the 18 copies that the first folio that the Folger Library put on the road from January to December 2016 to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the bard's death. One was on display in every state of the Union. 500,000 people lined up to view the literary treasure that had transformational powers. Many people broke down in tears in front of it. One couple proposed in front of it. Who is this man?
Sidney Lee.
Yes, thank you very much. Shakespeare biographer Sidney Lee produced the first census of the first folio in 1902. The year before, he was elected chairman of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. For years, he sought to answer this question. How many copies of the first folio does this bloke, Folger, possess? Book dealer Rosenbach calculated Mr. Folger owned at least 24 copies, not mentioned in Sir Sidney Lee's census. This is the front cover of another Shakespeare first folio Folger did not get. It was bequeathed to Cambridge University in 1894, and the year after Folger bought his first copy. This Cambridge copy would not have particularly appealed to Folger because it contained no significant annotations. Henry loved marginalia. He found the observations, the poems, the drawings, the decisions by early readers to correct Shakespeare's English, rich and revelatory. Huntington and J.P. Morgan, in contrast, preferred pristine copies. The bookbinder responsible for the Cambridge first folio was the Londoner Francis Vedder, around 1875. He also performed repairs and supplied the facsimile title page. In this slide, I have juxtaposed the Cambridge first folio spine on the right with another red Morocco binding by Francis Vedder on the left. It is from the Folger's first folio number 14 that I was consulting in the Folger reading room. My publisher's book designer chose the elaborate red and gold tooling on Folger's copy number 14 to embellish the jacket cover. Rosy-cheeked, white-bearded Shakespeare spouting Captain John Robinson of Watford, Hertfordshire, commanded the steamer on which the Folgers made several trips to England to buy books and to see plays. Henry's favorite play to read on ocean voyages was The Tempest. The Folgers treated the Robinsons to Shakespeare plays at Stratford-upon-Avon after the shipmaster retired. In Stratford, the Folgers stayed in room 10 at the Golden Lion Hotel. Ye Peacock Inn in Shakespeare's time, a Marks and Spencer department store, now stands on this site. This morning, I counted the steps from M and S to the SBT. For me, it was 375 steps. So I was thinking what might have been going through the Folger's mind every day that they met in that hotel to the birthplace. 6 pence got each Folger in to visit the birthplace in 1903. Henry and Emily signed the visitor's book in August 1905. The Folger's tickets to use the British Museum reading room in 1903. Henry asked to see John Florio's translation of Montaigne's essays, to study Shakespeare's signature therein. Folger was often offered for sale so-called genuine Shakespeare signatures that were fakes. I even have one on my Shakespeare insult tie. Henry's request slip to examine the 1603 quarto of Hamlet at the British Museum in 1903. Henry purchased 800 copies of Hamlet in his lifetime, but he never acquired this first edition. His arch rival, Henry Huntington, did. The signature in the upper right-hand corner reads A.H. Mayhew. He was a bookseller from Charing Cross Road in 1915. He was also the agent through whom Folger acquired his first major collection, that of the Duke of Warwick. In 1897, Folger paid £10,000 to the Warwick Castle Shakespeare collection, packed up in 8 boxes, including one first folio and 26 portfolios, sent to Brooklyn. Would the bookseller have monitored the use of books in the British Museum reading room as part of his career path? Or could it be a relative with the same name? Is it not also striking that Peter Folger's first boss on Cape Cod, Mass. was Governor Thomas Mayhew, born in Tisbury, Wiltshire, in 1593. Frank Salisbury and his wife on a steamer from London to New York. Known as Britain's painter laureate, Salisbury maintains studios in each city, painting 25 memories of the Royal House of Windsor and 6 American presidents. Having apprenticed in the stained glass factory, the painter loved his subjects to display vibrant colors. He turned sullen when John D. Rockefeller Jr. appeared in his studio in a gray suit. But he gleefully welcomed the Folgers when they arrived in their academic robes. Emily was a blue stocking, a woman with considerable literary interest and scholarly ability. Salisbury had draped a gilded throne with a rich cloth of carmine and gold, setting off her black vassar gown and pink hood. In her hand, a fan from the Shakespeare era depicts the scene from Henry V. The 1927 portrait hangs in the Folger reading room. Posed in a simpler chair, Henry is wearing Amherst purple and white in this twin portrait. In his hand, the only known copy of the Shakespeare Pedior Quartets, dated 1619, and owned by Edward Wynne, whose name is gilded on the cover. Henry had wrapped up this unique volume in a newspaper and carried it on the subway. Folger wore a white bowler on the golf links. Monday mornings at 10, he had a golf day with his boss, John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller always looked forward to beating his opponents out of their boots. Henry, at 5'4" and 115 pounds, was not powerful on the fairway, but he was deadly on the green. He is using what is called a Schenectady putter, which you address the golf ball the way you might address a croquet ball. This club was legal at the time, but later outlawed by Bobby Jones. John D. Rockefeller reportedly gave away $35,000 in nickels and dimes as a publicity stunt. He always had his valet stuff his pockets with coins in the morning. When Henry sunk a log pot, his nephew declared John D. would reach into his pocket and give Henry some dimes. Henry stored them in the top bureau drawer, but Emily later used them to make this watch. In the 1920s, the Folgers realized they needed to find a home for their Shakespeare collection. They considered 10 locations, including Stratford upon Avon, which exerted the most pressure on them. Finally, they decided on Washington, D.C., where they secretly purchased 14 red brick row houses called Grant's Row, no relation to me. It took them 9 years to buy out all the homeowners. Then they had the property that was in Emily's name demolished. Note the proximity to the U.S. Capitol. A crowd has gathered as the presidential limousine in Puck Circle, to the west of the Folger, for the dedication of the library in 1932. Wearing a shoulder corsage of orchids over her academic robe, Emily Folger is on the stage of the Shakespeare Theater getting ready to hand over the symbolic key to the chairman of the board of the trustees of Amherst College, which Henry had indicated in his will should it administer the Folger. Henry was not present. He had died in 1930. He never saw one stone of the marble memorial to Shakespeare. He never saw all of his books assembled in one place. He died of a pulmonary embolism. President Herbert Hoover and his wife Lou are about to enter the administrative wing of the Folger. Dapper British Ambassador Sir Ronald Lindsay will deliver congratulations from King George V. From the theater balcony, the American Society of Ancient Instruments will play airs from William Byrd, Thomas Moreland, and Orlando Gibbons. The first aerial photo of the library, taken a week later. For Folger, the purpose of the library was to give the generations yet to come a better working knowledge and understanding of William Shakespeare and the literary works of the 17th century. He was elated to locate his private research library for early modernists, as we say now, directly across the street from the public, government-operated library of Congress. Henry instructed his French-born architect, Paul Philippe Cray, to build a small, generic Elizabethan theater on the east side of the Folger. Henry made it clear the building would be primarily a library. There are only 260 seats. Actors love the space because the relationship with the audience is so intimate. There are 3 plays a year, 2 by Shakespeare. Antony and Cleopatra is playing from the 10th of October to the 19th of November. The oak panel gallery, showing 3 exhibits a year, is open to the public for free. The library is much more than books and manuscripts. For example, Henry bought 204 paintings, mostly about Shakespeare. The current exhibit is on these paintings. The subject of the October 2018 exhibit will be Churchill and Shakespeare, curated by recently retired reference librarian Georgiana Ziegler, whom some of you no doubt have worked with. The reading room is open to registered scholars and researchers and has to show a need to consult the collection that contains rare and irreplaceable volumes. The reader fills out a call slip and the staff fetch the item from the underground vault The items are brought up on a dove later. Emily is wearing the white lace, purple velvet gown that Julia Marlowe wore when she played Bush. Henry wrote to Shakespearean actors touring the U.S. to ask if he could buy their costumes. He bought trunk books from the English stage actors for Emily Irving and other items on sale after his death. Emily kept a theater journal noting details of the 125 performances she attended. She saved every ticket stub. This is the director's desk at the Folger. The partner's desk had been Henry's at the Standard Oil Company. On top of this desk, he kept a sheet of paper listing the current Shakespeare gems he wanted to acquire. Emily is wearing the hood and gown Amherst bestowed on her in 1932 with an honorary degree in letters. She survived her husband by 6 years. The value of Emily's fortune was cut in half due to the Great Depression. From her own petroleum stock, Emily completed the library's endowment. In coordination with the Amherst trustees, Emily became the central decision maker regarding the fledgling library. She fulfilled the couple's dream. My publisher asked me for an author headshot for the jacket, and I thought about that. And then I said, I have an opportunity to send not a headshot, but a wall shot. I am standing between my two subjects. I am standing beneath Will with his quill. The same figure that's in the Holy Trinity Church. I am standing a few paces in front of a bronze plaque behind which are two urns and the Folger's ashes. So I look at this and I say that Henry and Emily loved each other. They both loved Will, and this is the greatest ménage à trois in literary history.
Thank you. Can I just start with a question myself? I'm just very interested in what you're saying about Henry Folger's thesis and the, what was it called, the true text of Shakespeare, which in a way is what the folio preliminaries themselves say about their own book. And with that in mind, I was wondering whether she had already at that stage got the idea of this financial project where she'd be spending money on acquiring these books. Or was that further down the line?
Right. So the sequence was that it was 1896 when she had permission to write her master's thesis. There was a professor of Shakespeare studies at Vassar. She had to look around for someone who would be her thesis advisor. And she selected Horace Howard Furness, who was a Shakespeare collector who lived in Pennsylvania. So 1896 was 3 years after Henry had bought his first folio. Henry didn't have time to do the research, but he had the funds. And Emily, as you heard in the course of the talk, was the absolutely indispensable partner in this enterprise. So in terms of the sequence, the Folgers had started to collect first folios when she did her master's thesis. But that didn't stop them from together people buying. So that they bought first folios for 40 years.
Any questions, please?
did they stop buying purely Shakespearean material and start acquiring other manuscript collections?
After they had collected, they always wanted their collection to be mainly literary. But probably after, I would say, 15 years of collecting, then they branched out from Shakespeare to works from 1475 to 1715. And they also branched out into topics very different from literature. So they have a very nice collection of furniture, they have porcelain, they have armor, and there have been exhibits on those subjects. The paintings, I mentioned 200 paintings. Interestingly enough, about 1/2 of the Folger collection of paintings were misattributed. And a author by the name of Presley has examined them. And Folger never professed to be a professional critic of artwork. He bought paintings only when they were cheap. And they had to do with Shakespeare. So it was a gradual progression from Shakespeare to non-Shakespeare, and then from literature to other items. So one of the things that they collected were playbills. They collected 250,000 playbills about Folger, and they were delivered to an antiques dealer in Boston on the back of 2 donkeys.
Did he have a relation, or was Huntington collecting at the same time, and if so, did they have any kind of a relationship?
Henry Huntington, as the Folgers, same thing. They were born in the 1850s and died in the 1930s, so they were contemporaries. Henry Huntington decided earlier than Folger that he wanted to have a library, and he chose the West Coast, San Marino, California, and some of you have been there. They did not know each other well. They were very aware of the fact that they competed for the same books. Huntington had much deeper pockets. He inherited a fortune from his uncle, who was a railroad magnate. He also married his uncle's widow, and she had a fortune, and he developed his own fortune. The 2 Henrys were members of a club called the Hobby Club in New York. This is before Huntington moved to California. And the menus of the dinners have survived. So you can tell when they were there together. They weren't there for every dinner and meeting, but you see their signatures. And when Henry was thinking seriously about his memorial or his foundation for the Shakespeare collection, he wrote Huntington and said, "How did you do it? You have a board of directors, how does it work?" So from afar, they consulted with each other, but they didn't know each other well, they didn't spend a lot of time with each other.
Could you just ask me, what did Huntington decide to go to the West Coast? Because before refrigeration, air conditioning, etc., books would stay in a better condition because the climate is dry.
I'm not sure why he went to the West Coast. His wife was an art collector, so that's how they divided their teamwork. The husband did the books, the wife did the art, the wife also did the gardens. So if you go to the Huntingtons, you look at the Huntington gardens, which are just gorgeous. A number of loads of books that went from the East Coast to the West Coast by Huntington were destroyed in a truck wreck. So Henry noted that, so I can be very careful when I move the books from New York to Washington. Yes?
Actually, speaking to that comment, one of my favourite stories about the Folger, perhaps you can confirm if it's true or not, is that it was one of the very first buildings in the US, public buildings, to have air conditioning. And when it was first put to Henry Folger, he said, "Are you telling me that at the height of Washington summer, it's going to be 55 degrees in here? That is going to get people in." But was he aware, as far as you know, of the challenges of keeping books in that kind of?
Yeah, he was very interested in that question. But he allowed to have the reading room and the rooms, the vaults where the books were kept with air conditioning and humidity control. But for a long time, where the staff had their offices, they said, "You're going to have to sweat it out like everyone else in Washington." There's one other item that Folger thought would be the perfect way to protect the books from fire, and that was by using asbestos. So the library is still trying to clear out all of the instances when asbestos, that at the time looked to be a reasonable solution, was used. Yes.
I was wondering, you said Huntington had very deep pockets. I mean, now we know that the Folger collection is obviously worth huge sums. Where did they get the money from to make all these purchases? I mean, there was the £10,000 to Warwick Castle.
Right. Well,
Because he was just an employee, wasn't he?
he started as an employee, he ended as an employee, but he went all the way to the top. And he did what John D. Rockefeller wanted every employee to do, to buy stock. So he bought a lot of Standard Oil stock. He was nowhere near as rich as John D. Rockefeller. Henry Folger doesn't even appear on the list of the largest stockholders. But he certainly put a lot of money into buying stock, and his salary, I found only 2 years where I had a figure for his salary. In 1922, it was $50,000, and in 1928, I think it was $100,000. And when I mentioned the checks, those 10,000 checks that I won't bore you with, he also, I found in these archival boxes, these canceled checks from the Internal Revenue Service. So I know what he paid for taxes, and I know that he did pay taxes. One of the checks for his taxes he paid was $260,000. So while some people might say, oh, he was part of the Gilded Age and doing things with Rockefeller that weren't really above board, I think he paid his taxes, and a lot of the things that he did with the company were legal at the time, and then later when the antitrust legislation became illegal. Yes?
Thank you, I really enjoyed that talk. I was fascinated by the contrast between the exterior of the Folger building and the interior. Is this a sort of a committee trying, because the exterior is so Art Deco, so absolutely modern for the period when it was built, and the interior is this sort of very similar to the design concept in this room. What was the decision process there?
Folger hired a consulting architect who served as a buffer with his architect. But if he had a consulting architect and an architect that believed one thing and he was trying to suggest another, it was really 2 against 1. So this was an opportunity for Folger to say, I want both the interior and the exterior of this library to be Tudor. I want it to be Renaissance. And the 2 architects said, you can't do that. You are 2 blocks from the Capitol. You are surrounded by neoclassical buildings. The outside has to blend with those. But as soon as you cross the threshold, then you are in a Renaissance world. So that's what happened. The Folgers wanted to have it Renaissance everywhere, but very quickly agreed that it wouldn't work. So the people in the Folger called the building Greco-Deco.
The theatre that you showed us a picture of, do you know how the architect arrived at a sort of generic Elizabethan Jacobean indoor style? Because it looks a lot like the Worcester College drawings.
Folger's first idea was to model this representational generic Elizabethan theatre on the Fortune Theatre. Then he changed his mind. He said, no, I'm going to do the Globe. Then he wrote, I'm not going to do either. People are going to find some way of criticizing it. So I'm going to pick a generic. And that's what he did. One other thing I wanted to note about the theater was that it wasn't used as a theater until 1970. That was because the fire marshal would not allow the wood, which had not been treated, to have 250 patrons paying for tickets and sitting down. So it was used for a rare concert or for a lecture, but it wasn't used for the theater for 50 years after it was done.
Good, any more questions? Right, well, I think we'll close it down in this room and